Welcome to the 27. This is a custom setup analysis for the McLaren GT3 at Silverstone under these racing conditions. Let's go.
Let's take it slow. Who cares where we gotta be?
It seems like no matter what car or what track I'm driving, there's always a specific challenge that I have to overcome when building a setup, and the 720s did not disappoint at Silverstone. A lot of the times you can feel the solutions just hanging out there, just out of reach, and it's so elusive. Sometimes there are setbacks, but when it comes together, it really is a great feeling, and I had that here with the McLaren. Here, the challenge wasn't anything particular with the McLaren itself, but more of a global challenge that you'll find can affect vehicles in different ways. And it just so happens the McLaren, by its nature, made it a very important fix. With the last patch came some significant physics changes with relations to the tires and track temperatures, and in particular the grip loss that higher tire temps can cause. Meaning some cars like the McLaren, if you drive every lap like it's a time trial, you'll burn up the rear tires in a more noticeable way. The ultimate question is, what causes heat buildup in the tires? A big part of this is the track temperature, and that's static. We can't change it, but everybody's in the same boat. Other big elements are wheel slips, lockups, and driving style. Excessive slip angles and aggressive driving around every corner can add up heat, and depending on the nature of the car and its balance, can affect one tire more than the others. It'll cause drivability issues that seem to get worse and worse. Is there a mechanical solution? Well, we can certainly try. This is exactly the case with the McLaren. Naturally, it's a very pointy car, and what I mean by that is the front is really responsive to wheel inputs, and that the rear cannot cope with sometimes. Because of that, it's really easy to create that slip angle that you might have heard about here and there, where the rears are in the very edge of peak traction. This allows the cars to rotate really, really well, which lead to it being extremely fast in the right hands, and also was a big reason that later on the McLaren had a BOP horsepower nerf. What people don't realize is that slip, which is physically stretching the rubber and causing that squeal that you hear, generates heat. And if the car goes over that edge, although sometimes controllable, it generates even more. Look at your HUD after a corner where you had to counter steer. The rears will go up at least 2 to 3 C. Add that up and you'll have problems. When you're dealing with track temps in excess of, say, 30 C, it's a significant problem, and here at Silverstone at 45 C, it's an outright concern. Using defaults, the McLaren can easily hit a rear left tire temp in excess of 105 C in like 2 laps, which means keep going and soon you'll be in the grandstands. So what do? Well, the two choices are change your driving style, drive slower and relax that throttle foot tiger, or we find a mechanical solution. Namely, we try to limit slip as best as we can and spread it to the other tires that may not necessarily have the temp issues. So the McLaren you see here is not the same McLaren that you may be used to, so don't hate me. It still has that edge to throw it around, but instead of being its natural state, you simply have to search for it. There are times in this race you're watching, I did so for position. The new natural state here is, in 2 words, more planted. Starting off, we did what we always do. Adjust brake bias, it wasn't too bad. We reduced the pressure a bit because Silverstone has more gradual braking zones and not too many stomp your foot down type zones. This also limits some braking slip. Even with traction control, this happens. We adjusted the cambers, pressures. We closed the ducts a little bit because the high speeds here do a better job of keeping the brakes cooler. For the bigger fixes, the differentials are always in the conversation when talking about wheel slip. Believe it or not, when the differentials open up, the inside tire is slipping sometimes in excess of 30-40%. We want that to be around 10%, which is peak grip, so we had to lock them up quite a bit. We added clutch plates to make that lock stronger and reduced the preload and made that a bit less harsh. All good things, namaste. Mechanically, our ultimate goal was to keep the car planted in the rear first and foremost, which creates some noticeable understeer characteristics. This was done because the rears are going to heat up regardless of what we do, but we wanted to give the fronts a little bit more turning responsibility, keep the temp delta within 5 C. and not have the rears go over 100 C for very long. So you'll see some understeer at Copse, at Stowe, and at Abbey, which are all high-speed corners because we got rid of a lot of the rear ride height, reducing the rake of the car. And if you're saying, oh no, understeer, don't worry, it's manageable, and if you know it's coming, you can anticipate it better. You can actually even create oversteer if you want to, so it's not that bad. But we also wanted to maintain that pointiness, that McLarenness at lower speeds. We didn't want to neuter the car. So what we did is quite novel. I don't usually touch this, but I have been more and more, and that's the longitudinal weight bias. This does some positive things. It increases front end responsiveness, and it adds more stable acceleration, more rearward braking as well. With lowered rake and more rearward weight bias creating rear stability as a concept, we had more room to play with the ARBs, springs, and damping package. You'll see some crazy 0 Newton millimeter rear ARB builds for the McLaren, and we don't have to do that to create that rear stability. In fact, we want the rears to be somewhat stiff because that transfers heat from the left rear to the right rear in effect and helps you get rid of, all of the squatting that McLaren does in a straight line. We stiffened the whole package of the McLaren, springs and ARBs. With a reduced center of gravity with the lowered ride height, we kept that front end responsiveness that you love, but added rear end stability, further reducing wheel slip. We softened the front dampers to help with that turn in, and we balanced the rears a little bit, and that's all we needed there. One final note, I wouldn't necessarily use this for time trial. Perhaps increase the rake and reduced rear downforce might be an option for that. In any event, that's it. The McLaren 720s at Silverstone at 45C. I hope you enjoyed the build. Until next time, take care.
You're still mine. And we have the best times, no matter what we do. And even when we don't, there's nobody I'd rather choose. Let's take it slow. Where you go, I go.